we've been studying from the Gospel of Mark for several weeks on Sunday mornings, and there have been some passages that we sort of talked about even in class, and I said, I just really don't know how to take it, what it sort of meant by it. And so this afternoon's lesson has really sort of been inspired by some of the Bible study we've been doing on Sunday mornings. And so we have this concept, and in fact, I even brought one, mine's empty, so this is, just to prove I'm not hauling a bunch of food home, but, it's empty, okay? But, what do we do with the leftovers? I don't know we have too much. We may have a little bit left over, but what do you do with leftovers? And there's a lot of concern about that. Growing up, my mother never threw anything away, okay? We were raised up on, hurry up kids, it's going bad, need to eat this, okay? And so she would sometimes prompt us to hurry up and eat it before it went bad. So we never threw anything away much. And so I don't know, some people always say, I don't eat leftovers. I think, well, what's wrong with you? Sometimes things like beans are better the next day than they were the first day and stuff. So, but Mark chapter 8, verses 1 through 12, there's a lot of concerns about leftovers here. In fact, I'm going to read the text to you. It's Mark chapter 8. If you have your Bibles, you want to follow with me, you can. But Mark chapter 8, verses 1 through 12. We had this reading in Bible study class not too awful long ago. In those days, the multitude being very great and having nothing to eat, Jesus called his disciples to him and said to them, I have compassion on the multitude because they have continued with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. And I will send them away hungry. If I send them away hungry to their own houses, they will faint on the way, for some of them have come from afar. Then his disciples answered him, how can one satisfy these people with bread here in the wilderness? He asked them, how many loaves do you have? And he said, 7. So he commanded the multitude to sit on the ground, and he took the 7 loaves and gave thanks, broke them, and gave them to his disciples to set before them. And they set them before the multitude. They also had a few small fish, and having blessed them, he said to them, set also before them. So they ate and were filled, and they took up 7 large baskets of leftover fragments. Now those eaten were about 4,000. And he sent them away, and when he had sent them away, immediately got into the boat with his disciples and came to the region of Dalmanutha. And the Pharisees came out. We'll just stop right there with verse 10. So here we have Jesus doing this great miracle of feeding the multitude. He had compassion on it. He says, I really can't send them away this hungry because they've been here for 3 days. They haven't eaten. He said, some will faint by the wayside because they've come from a great distance. So Jesus asked his disciples, tell me what you've got. They said, we got a little fish and a little bread. He says, okay, let me bless it. And he sent them to feed each one of them. And so have you ever been out to eat, and requested one of these? Have you ever gone out to eat? Now Tammy, she goes, when we go out to eat a lot of times, she always seems like she always saves half her food. I never have that issue, okay? But when we ever go out to eat, almost always half her food, Jan takes it back to work. And she'll say this, she says, I'll have a good lunch tomorrow at work, or I'll have a good lunch next Monday at work. So she sort of does that. So when you ask for this, what are you looking for? Okay, what's the purpose of asking for one of those? Maybe it's a snack later. Okay, you think, well, I'll get hungry before I go to bed, and I'll eat on that later, or maybe lunch tomorrow, like Tammy says. I'll share this with someone else when Evan's home. If these boxes were fair game for him, unless you had your name on it, do not eat, he was going to eat it. Okay. Is it a doggy bag and take it home to the dog or the cat? I mean, what do you take for? Is it a space holder in the refrigerator? You've got those things in the refrigerator. You just never think to empty. It's sort of like it's a space holder. Like, that's the next thing that's going to go when I have a neighbor in the refrigerator. Is it a car odorizer? Not deodorizer, but have you ever got one of these and left it in the car overnight and you wake up, ooh-wee, it's a little bit ripe from the night before, or is it just a polite thing to do? You don't want to tell them, well, no, this food wasn't any good. I'm going to have to take it home and throw it out, and you still want to do it there at the restaurant. Why do you do it? What's the purpose of the leftovers? What does it mean? It means something. But what does it mean? So here, Mark makes 2 occasions here and makes a big deal about the leftovers. I mean, Jesus had fed, thousands on 2 different occasions, and there's this big hullabaloo made about the leftovers. So in Mark 8, verse 8, some ate, so they ate and were filled, and they took up 7 large baskets of leftover fragments. In previous chapters, in Mark chapter 6, the first feeding that Mark tells about, and so they all ate and were filled, and they took up 12 baskets full of fragments and of fish. I mean, there's a lot of emphasis made on the leftovers. And I remember when we studied this, what's the deal? What's the important things about knowing about the leftovers? And we talked about a few things. But it seemed like Mark wanted us to be attentive to these leftovers. He mentioned it twice. He mentioned it 12 specifically and then 7 later. But he says, I want you to get this. In fact, later in the text, okay, he sort of brings it out that Jesus wants them to think about the leftovers. So here we have in Mark chapter 8, beginning with verse 13. And he left them, getting into the boat again, departed to the other side. Now the disciples had gotten to take bread, and they did not have any more than 1 loaf with them in the boat. And they charged them, saying, take heed, beware the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod. And they assumed amongst themselves, saying, is it because we have no bread? But Jesus, being aware of it, said to them, why do you reason because you have no bread? Do you not yet perceive nor understand? Is your heart still hardened? Having eyes do you not see, and having ears do you not hear? And do you not remember when I broke the loaves of the 5,000, how many baskets of fragments did you take up? And they said to him, 12. And also when I broke the 7 for 4,000, how many baskets full of fragments did you take up? And they said 7. And he said to them, how is it that you do not understand? Now again, Jesus is taking them back to the leftovers. Don't you get the message of the leftovers? Don't you get the sermon? Don't you get the point of the leftovers? Now, I will say that in times, I've not gone fishing out in a boat a lot of times in my life, but a few times in my life I have. And I always enjoy it. It's always an adventure. Back my brother Mike that passed away, he had a boat for a while, and going with him was always an adventure because you never knew what you were going into. On more than one occasion, we would run out of gas. Okay. And he was too proud to wave people down and say, let's wave. No. And we'd be paddling back, or get a little battery trolling motor trying to get back to the shore. Okay. It was always an adventure. But you know what? I will eat things fishing on a boat on a hot summer day that I probably wouldn't touch on a normal occasion. Okay. One of those being potted meat. Everyone know what I'm talking about? Okay. It's just potted meat. Okay. And there's something about potted meat in the middle of the lake on a hot day. You don't have to heat it up because it's already hot. Okay. Just as long as the can's not blowed out a little bit, you're safe. Okay. And sort of stale saltine crackers. And if you're lucky, maybe a little hot sauce. And you will eat that and drink that with a lukewarm soda pop all day long just to get to continue to fish. Okay. But here we are in the middle of the lake and they're saying, what's the thing? Is it because he's concerned because we didn't have any food with us? And Jesus says, man, you guys just aren't getting it. You're not understanding it. And so they had not understood about the loaves because their heart was hardened. They just couldn't get what was the point about the leftovers. Why did Mark make such a deal about 12 and then 7? What was the big deal about the leftovers? What's the point that Jesus wanted to get? What was there to understand about the leftovers? Now, I'll confess it, and some of y'all can act self-righteous and pretend like you won't be. But about 3 or 4 hours from now, I'll be hungry again. Okay, and I'll be wishing I grabbed an old bony chicken wing or something like that to snack on a little bit. Okay, I'll probably be eating a peanut butter sandwich or some popcorn or something. We can't get popcorn. We're out of popcorn. I ate it all. But well, I did. But the reality of it is, I'll be hungry again, and I'll be wishing for something. I'll be wanting more. But what is the point about the leftovers? Why does Mark make such a big deal about it? Get this. We have to understand the cultural context. Okay. In the first feeding, there were 12 servants and 12 baskets left. Remember, Jesus and his apostles in Mark chapter 6 were there, and the apostles were there, and he told them to take the food and to feed the people. So there are 12 servants and there are 12 baskets left. Is that a coincidence? Or is there more to it than that? Okay. Now, Jesus in Luke chapter 17 told another story, okay? And he talked to them about having faith. And he said, if you have faith as a mustard seed, you say to this mulberry tree, be pulled up, and by the roots be planted in the sea, it would obey you. And it goes on to say, and which of you having a servant plowing or tending sheep will say to him when he has come in from the field, come in at once and sit down to eat? But we would rather not to say to him, prepare something for my supper and gird yourself and serve me till you've eaten and drunk, and afterwards you will eat and drink. So the cultural thing of the day was that the servants would eat last. Okay, they made sure that the master and the guests were served first, then the servants would eat last. And guess what they got to eat? What did the servants get to eat? leftovers. Whatever was left, they got to eat. Now, years ago, that's how children were raised. Believe it or not, kids, years ago, when you'd have a big dinner like this, you ate last. Okay? And you ate what was left. Okay? So if it was a gizzard and a neck, you were tickled to get it. Okay? So you ate last, okay? And I was going to make this great analogy this morning about how our helpers would go over this morning and they'd help prepare the food and they would eat last. But no, I got over there and they all had a bowl go have this morning. So I was going to use that, but I couldn't use them as an example, okay? Just kidding, okay? But it was true, okay? But they were hungry, okay? But anyways, okay? But the servants would eat last. That's the point. And Jesus, don't you know how it works here, guys? The servants always eat last. So when everyone was filled, their bellies were full, they're ready to take a nap, guess what? There were 12 baskets left. How many servants did we have? 12 servants. There was enough for each one of them to have their fill. So, and again, we go on to the second story, and you have to keep the numerology stuff going on. So the leftover servants eats last. That's the point that they make. So understand what? The leftovers were for the servers. In fact, the first time there were 12 servers and 12 baskets left over. The second time there were 7 baskets left over. And what does the 7 number represent? It's a 7. It represents the number of abundant completeness. So Jesus is saying, guys, you don't understand it. When you follow and serve me, you will be provided for. When you serve others first, guess what? There's going to be plenty left for you. When you put the kingdom first, guess what? Everything you need is added to it. When you just seek to serve others first, you'll be great. In fact, I will provide for you. You don't be worrying about sticking those pieces of bread and fish back in your own pockets for your lunch. Guess what? When you serve me, I will provide. I provide for my people. I provide for my followers. So here we have that they just didn't get it. They just didn't understand that Jesus, who was capable of providing for the multitudes, had provisions enough for them. It wasn't like God says, okay, now I'm going to bless you, but it's with a dropper. And I'm going to just drop. Just God's going to bless you abundantly. Jesus said in John that He came that His disciples may have life and they may have it more abundantly. Abundant living. There's a phrase that sometimes comes to me is, little is much if God is in it. And so when we really sort of recognize this, how we're blessed. Brother Chip, 2 great lessons this morning, really challenged us to understand the sufficiency of Christ in all things. He's both Jesus, He's both Christ, and He's both Lord of our life. But also this morning is that, calling upon God. When do we want Him? When do we want Him? And I think there's some really great comments were made. Chip said, hey, I really thought about the pride factor when someone else goes forward. How prideful it is for me to think, well, boy, they probably need it worse than I do. But that was a great point. So sometimes our hearts are hardened. They couldn't see it. It was more than about people getting their belly filled, but there was a lesson in it with the leftovers that there's more than enough. You take care of other people first, and God will take care of you. What they didn't understand. What didn't they understand? That Jesus would take care of them. That He would always be with them. His grace is sufficient, as Paul says. That His grace is plentiful. It's bountiful. You can't outgive Jesus. When you spend your life for others, your needs will be met. That's really important. There's a preacher's story, an illustration I gained some time ago. I probably shared it not too often long ago, but I'll share it with again because I sort of like how it comes across. There's this story of a guy that died, and he was given the opportunity to see both heaven and hell, okay, at his death. And so first he was taken to hell, and there was all kinds of people sitting at tables, just laden with food. I mean, just the most succulent food you've ever seen. But these people were emaciated, starving, wasting away, because every person's hands were strapped to these huge forks and spoons. Every hand was strapped to a fork. That was so long that the people putting the food, they couldn't put it in their mouth. That's the only way they could feed themselves. But they were so long that they stuck it in a plate of food. It was so long they couldn't get it to their mouth. And so they were wasting away in the presence of a sumptuous feast. And that was hell. And the guy said, that's a horrible, horrible vision. St. Peter said, yeah, that's hell. So he says, well, what's heaven like? And so he took him to another place and opened the door. And it was the same situation pretty much. This huge table lined with sumptuous food. And all these people with these huge forks strapped to their hands. And these huge spoons strapped to their hands. And there's all this food. But what they were doing, they were sticking it in the food and reaching across the table and feeding each other. And everyone had their fill. And there was not any want. He says, and this is the picture of heaven, where each is concerned for his brother's needs and not his own. You see, Jesus sort of called us into the kingdom of servants, kingdom of servers, in which we look to the needs of others and understanding that our needs will be met. That we should not have hardened hearts as the apostles and just think, wow, aren't we lucky, all these leftovers, but to think that these leftovers were provisions by God, because the leftovers even exceeded the amount that Jesus started with. Luke chapter 6, verse 38. Give and it will be given to you. Good measure. Pressed down, shaken together, and running over will be put into your bosom. For with the same measure that you use, it will be measured back to you. So, what are you going to take home with you today? Physical food? You can fill these things up, take it home. They'll be gone or thrown out. Give them to the dogs, fed to the cats. I think the most important thing we could have today was the spiritual food we experienced. Brother Chip sort of led us in a great Bible study this morning in a worship service. And you're here tonight, many of you are here tonight because you have servants' hearts. And that's why you're here this afternoon, because you say, brothers and sisters there, I'm going to be there too. You know? And I'm going to be there to encourage them. Just my physical presence will be encouragement to other people in your prayer. But if we can assist you anyway this afternoon, we can pray with you. There may be someone here that has never named Jesus or Savior, bear with him baptism. It would be a great homecoming for someone to make that claim today, that confess as your Savior, make him Jesus, your Christ, your Lord. If we can assist you anyway, in which comes we stand, Brother Jerry selected.